Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, August 15th, 2014. And once again, the top story is the Ukraine crisis. Now, you heard about this humanitarian convoy, these white trucks and the guys dressed in white T-shirts and khaki pants and little hats, the Russians, making their way, long convoy, to the Ukrainian border. The Ukrainians have said they're going to stop that convoy, but I think they're ultimately going to cross into Ukraine at a place that's not controlled by the Ukrainian military. And that's what a CIA source says, too. If it's not there already, it's going to be there. This big, long convoy of humanitarian aid, food, water, medicines, bandages, medical supplies, things like that. And according to The Guardian, who witnessed another smaller convoy, not an invasion, just a small convoy of military vehicles entering Ukraine. And so, Russia has long said our military is not officially there in Ukraine. Well, it looks like it is. Even though it's not a invasion force, they had a 23 long military convoy go across the border down a dirt road, according to this Guardian UK reporter. And says, yes, they're definitely in there helping the pro-Russian rebels. And they're definitely there. And this is just another move on the chessboard. And, meanwhile, NATO and the United States, they still are overtly and covertly pouring military hardware into Ukraine. I think that's why the Ukrainian army had this amazing turnaround. It was routing the rebels. I don't think it was a Ukrainian army. I think it was helped by U.S. military, special forces, advisors, you name it, they were there. And I think they're also, beefing up things in Poland. There's another round of, vehicles and people going there. And I think they're pouring the military hardware over there. And, this is already a hot financial war, as Peter Schiff said earlier this week. We got a financial Cold War going on. And he doesn't think the United States is armed well for it. I don't either. We're a country with a lot of debt. And more countries are getting away from using the dollar, including Russia, who made another big stink about it. We're going to trade oil and gas, natural gas, in rubles globally. The U.S. dollar system is hurting our economy. And, then we've had another case of, South Korea is one of the latest countries to open a yuan. That's the Chinese currency, the yuan swap in South Korea. These are one of our staunchest allies on the Korean Peninsula. They're opening up a yuan swap so they can, do trade in Chinese currency. This is not good for the U.S. dollar. Not good at all. I mean, that's why we have, in part, a great standard of living. We can print money to buy oil. And other countries have to have dollars to trade oil. And when that goes away, well, we don't need all these dollars. And, that's calamity, inflation. That's, all that rolled into one coming to our shores. I have said that when this thing ends, this is like a fraud. And frauds end quickly and badly. And I was reading, somebody saying that they think that dollar calamity will happen overnight. It'll just happen overnight. One night, some pinprick, some snowflake moment, as Jim Rickards says, will happen, and boom, the whole dollar system will come crashing down. But the rest of the world is working feverishly and vigorously to get away from that, from the dollar. And if you take a look at the sanctions that Russia put back on the West, and it's really hurting the EU, but, the U.S. is now hitting a hiccup in exports. Food products are big exports. What are the things we do make here in America? We grow food. Over in the EU, there's trouble in Spain. They've got, thousands and thousands of pounds of things like tomatoes and tangerines that they're not exporting. Poland is suffered a little more than 0.5% GDP hit already. In Finland, they laid off 800 dairy workers. The EU is doing terrible. They're not doing well at all. Some of the countries there are definitely in a recession. Other ones are definitely already in a depression. This ultimately could break up NATO, and we're still in the hot summer days of August. Wait until winter, and they need this Russian natural gas. There's no replacement for this. You can't just get natural gas from Canada to the U.S., and not to the degree they need it. I mean, they are huge users of Russian natural gas. Are they going to get cheap supplies? Are they even going to get supplies? Well, I think they'll get them, but I'm not so sure they'll be so cheap. And so this financial war that we have going on in Ukraine with Russia, U.S., NATO, Europe, I think we're going to lose allies over it. I think they're going to just try to save their own skins financially and economically speaking. I mean, this could throw them into a depression. They're doing bad already. They have a lot of debt, and Russia does not have a lot of debt relative to the EU, relative to the United States. There's another ceasefire between Israel and Hamas in Gaza. The ceasefire is scheduled for 5 days. Had a rough start getting going, but apparently it is holding. They are negotiating in Egypt, and I don't know how they're going to get around, the sticking points. Gaza says, "Hey, this is, Hamas. This is an open-air prison. You have our borders closed. You have our ports closed. We can't export. We can't import. We need our borders opened, and we need some of our prisoners back too." The Israelis say, "Hey, listen, you have to disarm. And we'll open you have to disarm, you must disarm." It'd be nice if Hamas would recognize Israel, which they say is a red line, but I don't think that's part of the negotiations. Israel's saying that Hamas has to disarm. And Hamas has adamantly said they will not disarm. I don't know how they get past this impasse, but at least there is a ceasefire for the next few days, we hope. At least there's that. Maybe the Palestinians in Gaza will have a relatively calm weekend. But I don't see how they get past the longer problems, the more far-reaching problems between Hamas and Israel. And on another note, apparently the Obama White House has stopped the export of Hellfire missiles to Israel. Hellfire missiles are offensive weapons. We're not talking about the Iron Dome missile. We're talking about the export of Hellfire offensive missiles. And then come to find out that Israel, for weeks now, has been quietly rearming, resupplying its ammunition and supplies through the Pentagon, which apparently is a military-to-military resupply that is a standard place. But the Obama administration has stepped in and said, hold off on the Hellfire missiles. We're going to scrutinize, all the missile exports to Israel for the immediate future. So, the relations between the U.S. and Israel are strained. They are obviously strained. And according to the Wall Street Journal, the Benjamin Netanyahu and Barack Obama had another one of these blowout, rough phone calls this past week. So the relations between the U.S. and Israel, at least the Obama administration, are not good. And I don't think it's a show. Some people say, that's just a show theater. I'm not so sure about that. I don't think it's a show. Next story, Ferguson, Missouri has simmered down after some pretty violent protests where shops were burned and rims were stolen, car accessories, quick trips or quick shops were, basically ravaged and looted, and a bunch of looting and violence going on in Ferguson, Missouri, which is a suburb of St. Louis. It's actually in the greater St. Louis metro area. It's between the, Lambert, that's my hometown. It's between Lambert Airport and, the Arch, downtown St. Louis. So it's in the greater St. Louis metro area, but they have these little towns, Clayton, Ferguson, all these little towns, around St. Louis that make up that metro area. But anyway, this, unfortunately, the rioting started because there was an 18-year-old kid that was shot by a Ferguson police officer, and he reportedly was unarmed. He was shot multiple times. So I don't know why that happened, and there's an investigation going on, but the initial response was a military-type response. I mean, with armored vehicles and snipers and fully automatic weapons and, military-type gear by the Ferguson police. And, now the governor, Jay Nixon, has stepped in and said, back that off. And has sent him the highway patrol to supervise, what's going on, any kind of protest or to keep order there. It's just sent in the highway patrol. They don't have all the garb on. And, the head guy there is an African-American, so I think that might help out some, too. But this is the bigger picture, though. I want to talk about the bigger picture, the militarization of state and local and even federal departments that wouldn't think they would be militarized. And this is what I think is going on. I think most people in the federal government know we're going to have another terrible financial crash, and it's going to be around the dollar. A lot of people are going to lose a lot because they're not going to be able to transact. They're not going to have dollars. They're going to have high inflation, whatever. There's going to be a financial calamity. And I know at the federal government, and I think at the state and local governments, they also know that. That's why they're militarizing these police forces with all these weapons and body armor and helmets and all this stuff that you'd find on the battlefield in Iraq or Afghanistan and not in Ferguson, Missouri. And I think, take a look at some of the looting going on. Let's take a look at what the quick shop you've seen on YouTube. There's a quick shop, probably had 5 or 6 people that were employed there. They're not getting paid. So they're not paying any, any taxes, no FICA, no state, no federal taxes. They're not getting paid. They're not selling any products. They're not selling gasoline. If they sold gasoline at this at quick shop, most of them do. So there's no gas tax there. No products are moving. No commerce is being done. Now multiply that one little quick shop business by 10 million, 100 million, all over America. And there's no taxes being done. There's no commerce being done. There's massive unemployment. And I think that's what the militarization is for. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not saying I'm for it. I'm saying I think this is their mindset. They're not going to let that happen. They're not going to have a financial calamity and then intensify that calamity by destroying businesses and the economic base. They're not going to do that. That's what the militarization is for. And, people like Rand Paul have come out pretty strong this past week. So we should demilitarize the police departments, around the country. And even agencies like, last year there was reportedly that the IRS got, 15,000 or 7,000 AR-15s. And and this year that the USDA, the United States Department of Agriculture, got fully automatic 40 caliber, rifles or weapons that they said that they needed. And the ammunition bought by the government in the billions of rounds, hollow point ammunition. And I think that's the worrying part. That when we have a calamity, and this calamity, these people looting, and I don't care what color they are or what precision they are, desperate people do desperate things, and people on the lower economic stratification, they're already seeing the inflation. They're already seeing high food prices. They're already seeing the price of everything go up. We have a little dip in gasoline going, but they are already seeing much higher prices for food and a lot of things, and their government checks, half the people in America get some sort of government check, whether it be disability, whether it be EBT, food stamps, whether it be Social Security, which a lot of those people paid for Social Security, but a lot of people are getting some sort of government check. What happens if that government check stops, or the printed money that supplies that government check doesn't do as well as it did, doesn't perform as well? In other words, gas can't be $3.50 a gallon. That's $12.50 for a gallon of gas, or $17 for a loaf of bread. What happens to people then? Are they going to go crazy? Are they going to be like, Jesse, like somebody said, one of the preachers, I think it was Jesse Jackson, said, there's a Ferguson, Missouri near you. Well, maybe. And there's a militarized police department in that Ferguson, Missouri near you. And I think that's what they're afraid of. I don't think they'll demilitarize the police force until after there's a big calamity, and may not ever. But they definitely won't demilitarize the police and some of these federal agencies that I mentioned before this upcoming calamity. And one is surely coming. And I don't mean to be doom and gloom. It's just a math problem. The math doesn't work out very well. Finally, I want to talk about Hillary Clinton. I'm going to get into the weeds here a little bit, but she came out in a magazine article and was basically mocking President Obama. And you know how he said a few months ago that, sometimes foreign policy, something to the effect, sometimes foreign policy is, you don't do stupid stuff. And Hillary Clinton came out and was criticizing the president's foreign policy. Now, listen, I'm not saying it doesn't need criticizing, but this is somebody that is going to want his help. This is somebody that's going to be, want to run for, the presidency of the United States, supposedly, even though she hasn't announced. And she came out and said, don't do stupid stuff. That's the quote. Don't do stupid stuff is not an organizing principle. Well, I don't care what party you're in. I mean, President Obama made her Secretary of State. That's a pretty nice booby prize for somebody who didn't win a presidential election. And I don't care whether you like Barack Obama or you don't like him, or you like his policies or you don't. But listen, this is a 2-term president. He still has a lot of power. And Ed Klein, who wrote the best-selling book Blood Feud about, the Clintons, Hillary and Bill and Barack and Michelle Obama, Blood Feud is the book. I heard him talking, and he had a really good take. That's what I thought. Ooh, Barack Obama's mad. Yep, he is, and he's going to hold a grudge. And that's already bubbling out that supposedly, according to Ed Klein, they've already contacted the Obama White House, Elizabeth Warren, senator from Massachusetts, and said, hey, we'll support you politically and financially. You need to run in these primaries. That is not what Hillary Clinton needs. She doesn't need somebody like Elizabeth Warren, whether you like her policies or don't. Some of them I do, some of them I don't. About guns I don't, about the banks I do. But shit, that's not what Hillary Clinton needs. She doesn't need a real, well-financed competitor who the sitting president of the United States is backing. That's trouble. That's a problem. And I don't believe they hugged it out, at Martha's Vineyard. No. They may have been nice and smiled and said niceties, didn't say anything crude or gauche or whatever, they're professional politicians. They know how to talk, but they also know how to fight behind the scenes, overtly and covertly. And I think Hillary Clinton made a huge miscalculation. She should have just done no harm, just kept her mouth shut is what she should have done. But either way, I don't think there's going to be a Democrat in the White House in 2016 anyway, if we have an election. And I do not think, and I've said that, I will say this now, I did not think she'd be the ultimate winner of the presidency before. And now I know she's not going to win because the sitting president of the United States is going to throw his power and political will behind somebody else, and that's probably going to be somebody like Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts. But we shall see. 2016 is a couple of years away. That's the way I see it. I'm Greg Hunter. I appreciate all the comments on the site and on the YouTube channel. I appreciate the donations that we get, and thank you very much for that. And again, I say that's the way I see it. Have a nice weekend, and fear not.